Larry Nassar was sentenced to 175 years in prison for sexually abusing underage girls for decades. But now the parents of those victims are joining civil lawsuits against the organizations that kept Larry employed throughout that entire period. Joining me to talk about this is attorney Matt Schultz. Matt, start by telling us exactly who is Larry Nassar and what are the charges against him? And then we want to talk about how did it get so crazy?
Sure. Well, to know Larry Nassar, you have to understand the USA Gymnastics Association, which is a private organization that essentially selects, looks for, and trains up talent in the gymnastics world for the U.S. Olympic team. Mr. Nassar, Dr. Nassar, eventually came to the U.S. Gymnastics Association in the mid-'80s as a trainer and eventually went to medical school and became a team doctor, if you will. And as it turns out, over the past 5 years, there have been a series of sexual assaults on young girls, and thankfully, it's all come to light here recently. He has been charged criminally. He was charged by the federal government with child pornography in a separate issue, and then eventually charged with destroying child pornography off of his computer. But he was charged in state court with initially 3 sexual assaults on these young girls, and then additional charges were filed. And as you mentioned, Mike, he was recently sentenced to up to 175 years in prison for that. And we're now seeing a movement toward the civil lawsuits beyond the criminal charges.
Matt, you've tried cases all over the country. You've been involved in some of the most complex cases in America. And every time you go to trial, every time you engage in discovery, you usually see a trend where we start early on in the case, you start hearing things. Somebody says this about a product, somebody says this to a scientist or a doctor, and all of a sudden you keep hearing it again and again. And typically what we see is corporations ignore the things that they think might interfere with their profit margin. Tell me what your take is on this in that regard. Were there no signs that for more than 20 years he sexually abused women through his work at Michigan State University and the USA Gymnastics? I mean, these organizations had to have some warning signs, didn't they?
I think clearly they did. We know there were complaints going back at least to the year 2000 with Michigan State. There was a retrospective investigation done where they actually found cause, in other words, found that he had molested one of these young girls back in that time frame. And, you know, Mike, I looked up the budget of the USA Gymnastics organization. We're talking about an organization that has somewhere around $28 million in assets on an annual basis. This is not a small mom and pop operation. They have a vested interest. The university had a vested interest in seeing that this didn't come to light. Now, I have not seen the evidence. We will certainly have a lot more come to light between the Attorney General Special Prosecutor investigation and, of course, civil lawsuits, which are, you know, the greatest engine ever invented for discovering corporate malfeasance like this. So I predict that by the time we get into discovery on these cases, you will see that there was a lot of knowledge from the top down.
Matt, we've seen the same scenario play itself out with the Catholic Church, where, it's like the 3 monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. We don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. We saw it with Penn State. We see it again and again, the same scenario where somebody intentionally makes the decision that profits are more important than the lives of those children that are being affected. Now, as this civil suit, as you point out, civil suits are being filed against both the USA Gymnastics and the university. So what do you think of the chances of these suits being successful? What do you anticipate in understanding how a lawsuit evolves? How do you typically see these things evolving to where we get one little bit of information and that leads to the next, and then somebody blows a whistle? What is your take on how you think this thing will evolve based on the facts that you've seen so far?
Well, we have seen that, Mike, you and I both in our work, whether it's tobacco companies, pharmaceutical companies, Monsanto, whom you were just speaking of. You get in early into the investigation. You have bits and pieces of information. Once you can actually put somebody in the hot seat get documents, start asking hard questions of people when they're under oath and have nowhere to run, then you eventually get to the truth. You mentioned the Sandusky affair at Penn State. I think that's a good example. You know, Louis Freeh, the former FBI head, did an investigation and revealed that Paterno had knowledge, the university president, university vice president, the athletic director, all were implicated in that affair. And you're going to see a similar investigation here, both from the Attorney General and through the civil lawsuits. And I do believe we will, just given our experience in years of doing this, that we're going to see you can't have this level of, frankly, depravity, this consistent course of malfeasance, misconduct, without anyone knowing about it. And we already know there are complaints lodged that the university and USA Gymnastics apparently swept under the rug.
And of course, this story seems to fit into the same pattern of schools and other sports organizations that are making money. Understand, university made a lot of money. I mean, they look at what is the totality of the money coming in to the university. That is going to trump every time. It's going to trump the best interest of athletes if they're affected, or students if they're at risk. Always the pattern has been, we're always going to opt for the side of our bottom line. And this really is a bottom line analysis, isn't it? Don't you think by the time this is over, we're going to see that this is all about dollars and cents again? It's not about children's welfare. It's about dollars and cents. What's your take?
I think that's right. I think that's where this will end up, and that's why we have punitive damages under our laws, at least most states do. And punitive damages are to punish specifically corporations, whether it's universities or again, pharmaceutical companies, tobacco companies, or what have you, that put profits over safety, or in this instance, over the emotional and physical welfare of the people in whose care these organizations were vested. And so I predict that by the time discovery is over and the full truth has come out, if the universities don't and USA Gymnastics don't successfully settle these cases, that we will see punitive damages on the table, because I predict there will be that level of misconduct.
I agree. One other prediction I have is that the NCAA, as this goes forward, will not do much to really help. NCAA is such a money machine. They are an absolute cash cow, and they're going to do everything they can do to make sure that this is minimized as far as the impact. Matt Schultz, thank you for joining me. I want to stay in touch with you as these cases develop. Thank you for being here.
Great to be here, Mike.